Hello and welcome to Current Affairs on JTV. Today we've got two guests joining us. We have Avi Abelow in Jerusalem, who's CEO of 12 Tribe Films and founder of IsraelVideoNetwork.com, and Dr Phil Leech from Canada. He's the Gordon F. Henderson Postdoctoral Fellow, Human Rights Research and Education Centre, University of Ottawa, and author of The State of Palestine, A Critical Analysis. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me today. Phil, that's quite a title you've got there, and quite a long one. Our topic today is settlements. And we'll take it where we can. But I'll start with you, Phil. Are settlements legal?
Evidently not. No. Under the Geneva Conventions, it's not legal to put to transfer civilian populations into occupied land. But I dare say that the point is not whether they're legal or not. I was told you told me that the topic of the session was are settlements are an impediment to peace, and I would argue that settlements per se are not. And I think the problem is that the language you use here, settlements gives it sort of a benign feeling, but these are not settlements; these are colonies. And if you're talking about people living, in the West Bank, that's reasonable and feasible, but to colonize the West Bank, which is to deny the dignity of the local indigenous population, to deny basic human rights.
Well, hang on. Let's stop there for a second.
So it's not settlements which is a problem; it's colonization which is the problem.
Right. So that you're making a clear distinction then between the mode of living arrangement. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I have a roommate. I have a housemate here with my family. He lives with us in our house. He contributes. He's a great guy. And there's no problem. We make a compromise on space in the house, but it's in everybody's best interest that happens. But if somebody burst into my house and took over space, didn't contribute, and denied me and my family basic dignity, that would be a problem. There's the distinction.
Okay. The reason, though, I started with legal issues is because your flatmate is living there legally, correct?
It's true, yeah.
So it is possible, let's just understand this, looking at your own construction, it is possible for someone to be living somewhere illegally, but that's still not being a problem, correct?
Well, the entire peace process around the Israel-Palestine conflict is taking place outside the norms of international law. The Oslo process was not operated through the United Nations, it occurred in secret, and has been arranged through agreements between the two sides. I think as long as the situation remains as it is, and you've got such an imbalance of power, legal norms are important, and human rights are always important. But can we compromise on things? Can we make a difference in the future about what is legally? I think the most important thing is about respecting the dignity and basic human rights of all concerned. So legality is important as long as those dignities and those human rights are being disrespected. But if those were to be respected, then I think a compromise is possible.
Okay, right, let's stop there. Avi, over to you. Let me start with the same question I started with Phil. Are the settlements legal?
Oh my God, of course they're illegal according to international law. It is so clear. Anyone who actually understands history, 1920 San Remo Conference, 1922 League of Nations, before the United Nations came about, international law says the whole Judean Samaria area belongs to the Jewish people, which is now Israel. But I want to get to the point of Dr. Leech. I am so happy he believes that the dignity and human rights is the most critical issue, because anyone with a thinking mind should know historically also that to really understand the best time when these Arabs have dignity and human rights is when Jews live in settlements nearby. When Israel was in the Gaza Strip, the Gazan Arabs lived they had jobs. They had a better equality and better economy than they have today. Under Hamas, they are occupied by Hamas. Hamas treats them without human dignity, without equality. They are terrorized by Hamas. When did they live peacefully? When they lived with Jewish neighbors in our legal settlements. Because in Gaza, Jews lived in Gaza back in Talmudic times. Jews lived in Gaza hundreds of years ago. Jews lived in Gaza before 1948, before the establishment of the State of Israel. The village of Kfar Darom was established in 1946 in modern Israel, even before the State of Israel came to be in existence. So first of all, that's on the issue of human dignity. True human dignity for the Arabs will be when Israel and Jews live nearby and we have sovereignty under the Palestinian Authority in Judea and Samaria, what some people call the West Bank. They are also oppressed by the Palestinian Authority. The Jews who do not live under the Palestinian Authority are in better shape than those who do. Now, going to the legal status of the settlements. First of all, it's also important to understand everyone must ask the question. People have to understand history. And it's nice talking about the settlements in a vacuum as if history started in 1967. But any thinking person must think, wait a second. Israel was established in 1948. Between 1948 and 1967, Jordan illegally occupied Judea and Samaria, what some people call the West Bank. Why was there never a call for a state of Palestine to be created in the West Bank between those years of 1948 and 1967? Not only was there never a call to action, never an international initiative. The people who lived in the West Bank, they weren't even called Palestinians. They were Jordanian citizens. And it would have remained that way if Jordan had not attacked Israel to destroy it in 1967.
Avi,
why it is significant, whether you call people Palestinians or not, whether they have basic access to rights or human dignity. You can call me a Dutchman for all you want, but I still have human rights. I don't understand.
Wonderful, but if you listen to me, Dr. Leech, they have more human rights living with Israel and Jews than they do living under their own brethren of Hamas in Gaza and the Palestinian Authority.
Okay, fair enough. Yes,
Everyone cares about the human rights of the Arabs.
Guys,
they
we
live
need
with
to.
more rights living with me as neighbors. I am a proud settler. I go shopping with them.
Avi, stop for 1 second. Avi, gentlemen.
I know the situation of the Arabs more than maybe in Ottawa.
Guys, we need to. Can we just stop this for 1 second? Stop this for 1 second. Guys, look, we need to at least allow each other to speak here. Just for a second, you can ask a question, listen to the answer. We can't have like 10-minute answers going on and on and on, okay? So look, let's just try and get to the rub of this, basically. Avi, you're saying, just so we can understand your position in a nutshell, you're suggesting that the Palestinians have better human rights and better dignity under Israeli sovereignty than they do under Palestinian sovereignty. Is that correct?
100%. The Arabs who live with Jews have more dignity and more human rights than they do in Gaza, living under the occupation of Hamas and under the Palestinian Authority in the areas of the West Bank.
Right. Phil, what do you say about that?
Well, I don't think human rights is something you can measure side by side. I am a great critic of Hamas, and if you read my book, you will see, and it is an entire monograph criticizing the Palestinian Authority. I've never been a fan of this organization. I've never been a fan of Hamas at all. I'm very critical of them both, but I don't. There's 2 points. First of all, you don't simply compare whether you've got more human rights under this or more human rights under that in order to justify a belligerent occupation. You could say Irish Catholics have better human rights under the British occupation than they're not. This doesn't make sense. It's just nonsense. Excuse me, Avi. I let you finish. Now, can you please listen to me? Because this does not justify a belligerent occupation. But the bigger point here is that you may have some. I mean, I agree with you that I think the Palestinian Authority and Hamas are not great respecters of human rights. I've written a great deal about this. But we can't simply take that completely out of context. The Palestinian Authority, for example, is the method by which the occupation is outsourced. It controls a very small amount of population in the West Bank and does so based on a lot of foreign aid, a lot of foreign training in order to help support Israel's security concerns. None of this prioritizes the basic dignity and the human rights of the indigenous population. If we get to that point, it doesn't matter what the arrangement is in terms of governance. If you get to democracy, so that the people who are governed elect their governors, which would be true if they could, if they voted for both the Israeli government and the Palestinian government, or some other arrangement. It doesn't matter what the arrangement is specifically. I don't care about that. I just simply, you cannot deny that there is an arrangement wherein one large group of people are denied en masse, systematically, basic rights and basic dignity.
Okay,
and
Phil.
This is our fundamental concern.
So I think if I can again sum your position up, it's a question of national self-determination as far as you're concerned. You don't particularly, you're not concerned about what happens after that point, but you think it's just that point that counts, yes?
Well, yeah, and it's not, I mean, it's individual self-determination as well. These are human rights.
Right, okay.
The individual sovereign,
So-
not just the Palestinian identity. I think
I get your point. So you're at that point. You're at the point of the individuals and beyond.
Or any other Israeli citizen, whether it.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you're an Israeli citizen, you have national rights and you have individual rights. I only think the same should be the case with Palestinians.
Okay, Avi, do the Palestinians, or I'm guessing you're not going to recognise them as Palestinians, but do the inhabitants of that area deserve self-determination?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Dr. Leech for agreeing with me that the Arabs who live in Gaza and Judea and Samaria have more dignity and human rights living under Jews than they do living under their own brethren. So I thank you for that.
This is a bit of a manipulation of what I said, Avi. Come on.
No, you agreed. You agreed. You said you are very critical of Hamas and the Palestinian Authority and their
People can
human
just say
rights.
why and see that I didn't agree with you. So why bother twisting it like that, man? Come on.
Okay, I think that was pretty clear. I think it's pretty clear.
All right. I think that point is clear.
No, you said that you turned your argument away from human rights and dignity to national self-determination. All right.
No, I haven't. I just said the opposite of that. Come on, man. What is this?
Wait.
This is ridiculous. You just take what I say, you change it, and then you think I'm agreeing with you. That's not an argument. That's just fantasy.
So the Arabs have more dignity and a better. Okay, Dr. Leech.
It's just not serious.
Okay, all right.
We'll let everyone decide.
Gentlemen.
I'm going to deal with the national self-determination.
Let's just look at that issue,
aspect.
please. Yes.
Okay? You bring up indigenous population. We are the indigenous population, Dr. Leech. The Jews have been here for thousands of years. We have never left this land. Do you remember the massacre, the Muslim massacre of Jews in 1929 in Hebron? Yes, Hebron, the second holiest city to the Jewish people. There was always Jews living in Hebron from time immemorial. We are the indigenous population. The Arabs come from all over. That is why their last names include cities from Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Syria, etc. It is the Jews who've been here forever. We are the indigenous populations. Anyone who wants to live with us can live with us with freedom and equality. It is only in Israel that Muslims have equality, freedom of religion.
It's so blatantly, obviously not the
Only
case.
in Israel can a Muslim be a Supreme Court judge.
Avi, is your argument, are you basically saying, Avi,
you don't
calm
have
down.
that in other Muslim countries. You have Shiite countries oppressing the Sunnis. You have Sunni countries oppressing the Sunnis.
Avi, listen for 1 second. Okay, you're now saying, therefore, that you're not answering my question. You're suggesting that you're saying it's Jews only who deserve to live there, right? Is that essentially your point?
There are 56 Arab countries in the world, only one small Jewish country. This is our land. They can live here in peace with us. If they want self-determination, they can go to Jordan. So that was part of the mandate of Palestine. If they really want a Palestinian country, or they can go to any other one of the 56 Arab countries in the world. We have one small Jewish country that's called Israel, and we are the indigenous population of this land.
So I take it you're very much against a two-state solution then?
There's already a three-state solution: Israel, Jordan, and Hamas-controlled Gaza.
Fine. So you're happy with that solution?
For sure. There's no reason to slice up Israel more to create another Hamas-ISIS state that will just terrorize Israel and the rest of the world.
Right. Phil,
and they don't deserve it. They can live in peace with us and have more human dignity and human rights living with us than by slicing up another part of Israel to carve out another terror state.
Right. Phil, are you committed to the two-state solution? Is that your preferred solution?
Well, as I said, I think the structures of whatever solution are secondary to the fundamentals of where the solution comes from. And the basic paradigm of human rights is not us and them, which cuts to the very core of what Avi's saying. This is the bare racism of Avi's statements. It's us and them. It's the Arabs. They can go somewhere else. Can I kick you out of your house and you just go live with somebody else? Is that fair? Is that decent?
No, I said they live with us peacefully. I wasn't kicking anyone out.
I haven't finished the thing. The fundamental dynamic to a human rights-based system is we. It's about inclusion. It's about inclusivity. And it's about working together. And I think any system that's based on that, about parity and equal rights under the law, equal access to opportunity, to benefits, as good as it can be in a modern society, that whatever solution prioritizes that or is derived from that is the correct solution. I've been a great critic of the two-state solution up to now, but this is based on the way it's been structured and the way it's been implemented. It could be implemented better, I agree. I think a one-state solution also is something that can be criticized for obvious reasons. But if it was implemented in the right way, which prioritizes basic human dignity for all concerned, for both, if you want to claim indigeneity, then that's fine, but also respect other people's claim to indigeneity, then I think that solution is reasonable also.
Okay,
I simply think it's unreasonable to claim that you have exclusive right to human rights and dignity in this one piece of land, which is obviously and clearly contested by people who have similar claims. It just simply does not make sense. This is the politics playground. I think we've got to be grown up since 2017. I'm 32.
You twisted my words, Dr. Leech. I said the Arabs have more dignity and human rights living with us as citizens of Israel, and also when they live under our rule in Judea and Samaria, than they do under their own rule. I am all for dignity and human rights. I believe I care about the Arabs and their human rights and dignity more than you do. I think you have an ideological agenda. I want to live in peace with my Arab neighbors and get rid of the terror. And the only way that the terror will be gotten rid of is if you stop deluding them into thinking that if they just terrorize us and the world more, that they're going to get appeasement with carving up your hand.
Whenever I advocated anybody terrorizing, I don't think anybody could possibly draw anything of what I've said to that conclusion. That's nonsense. I haven't advocated any kind of terror.
By supporting the continuation of a failed two-state solution, which only has led to more and more terror on the Arab side, and then not letting them know that the solution.
What is going into your headphones? Because I didn't say any of that.
I'm not blaming you. I'm not blaming you. I am basically making a point. By continuing to appease terrorists and 20 years of killing and murdering Jews and continuing trying to pressure Israel to give up our homeland, that allows them to continue their terror against us. I'm not calling you out personally. I am saying the world of getting involved and continuously pressuring Israel to try to establish a two-state solution that originally was denied by them in 1917 in a Faisal-Weizmann agreement. Already back in 1917, they have been saying no to a two-state solution for 100 years. They do not want it, and yet they continue to terrorize and kill Jews. We will have peace here when the world gets out of our lives, allows us to live peacefully with our Arab neighbors, allows us to give them the equality and dignity without a fake imposed solution of a Palestinian Authority that you agree is wrong, and an occupation of Hamas in Gaza that you agree is wrong, because under our rule, they will have human rights and dignity. And on the legal level as well.
Avi, you don't seem to get it, though. You don't seem to get it. You don't give people dignity by ruling them.
They have more dignity of life. It's not ruling them. They want to live under our rule.
Would you like to be ruled by a belligerent foreign army?
You are saying a person would prefer to live in a rule where he could be killed by Hamas than live in Israel where you can have freedom of worship, freedom of equality, freedom to have any job he wants in the country. Is that what you're saying?
I'm obviously not supporting Hamas, and I've written a whole book on what the Palestinian Authority.
Let Phil finish. Let Phil finish, please.
Against Israel.
I think, Alan, Avi, we've really got to think about what the conditions are in, for instance, the West Bank or Gaza now, because the settlements, the Palestinian Authority, and Hamas, they are part of a broader system. We know that the land in the occupied territories is divided up. We know, if you can look at any report from any reputable source, from any part of the United Nations or a whole raft of Israeli NGOs, they'll talk about the layers and layers of structural impediments to basic rights, to dignity, to a basic economy. There is no Palestinian economy.
Do you care about Muhammad living a life of dignity, Dr. Leech? Do you sincerely care about that? Sincerely.
Sorry. Which Muhammad? Who are you talking about?
I want to tell you a story. Just this weekend, I met a Muslim boy whose grandfather was murdered by Hamas. His father helped the IDF in Gaza in order to deal with the terrorism of Hamas. Wait a second, listen, Dr. Leech. This Muslim today, he's a grandchild of the grandfather murdered by Hamas. He is a proud IDF soldier in Israel. His father ran away from Gaza to Israel. Him and his brothers are all IDF soldiers. They are Muslim soldiers in the IDF. Why? Because they have dignity and they have human rights, and they're living in a country where they can fight and protect their lives and not be killed by their own brothers, whether Hamas in Gaza or the Palestinian Authority, Fatah, in the West Bank. So if you sincerely care about the dignity and human rights and the right to live of any Arab Muslim in what you call the West Bank or Gaza, then you should listen to what
everybody calls the West Bank, apart from you.
It's Judea and Samaria historically.
Right. Okay. Let's move to a slightly different topic for 1 second. Let's move to a slightly different topic. Hold on.
This case is terrible. There are lots of terrible cases. I have not defended Hamas for a second. I've not defended the Palestinian Authority for a second. I can give you a whole list of reasons why I wouldn't defend either of them. But we cannot simply extract the existence of these bodies or the problems facing Palestinians from the greater context, which is the belligerent, oppressive, ongoing occupation of Palestinian lands and Palestinian lives. It's a profound weight on everybody who lives there. You give me a case for
not weight upon you, not about the Muslims who live in Israel. They are very happy being Israeli citizens, and the Arabs who live with us prefer living under Israeli.
Avi, wait a second. I think Phil is talking about something slightly different.
Examples of people who are very much not happy living under occupation. It's pretty obvious about, and you can look at polling data if you want to be more scientific. But the thing is, there is no basic right. There is no dignity. There is no basic life in theEst Bank under occupation. There is no.
Avi, Phil, stop for a second, please. Phil, stop for a second.
I see it every day, and they work by us and travel our roads, and we go shopping together. But he in Ottawa knows better than I do living here. That's very interesting.
Yes, I spent a long time in the West Bank.
Hang on. Let me try and get out of this.
Come visit me. I will take you around and show you the truth.
I don't want to listen.
Well, look, I would love that. I would love that, Avi. But I've spent a lot of time, particularly in Nablus, while it was under siege, and in Ramallah and Bethlehem, Jericho. I've been down all the way to Avis. You see the situation in Hebron with a division of the city, and the fact you've got this very small settler population, which is basically cleared out a whole section of the population. You see kids.
Which was massacred by Arabs in 1929, Jews who lived there for thousands of years.
Nobody's denying that massacres are... Look, Avi,
you are supporting apartheid.
Guys, we're just repeating ourselves right now. We're simply repeating ourselves. We're repeating ourselves. We are repeating ourselves. You're both repeating yourselves. If there was a repetition contest, you two would be world champions right now.
The city is divided, and people exist with very few basic rights, and they live in perpetual fear. And lots of people I know.
Okay.
Lots of people I know.
Are you going to allow me to ask you a question?
Detention, which only happens to
Palestinians. I just happen to know, Dr. Leech, of a secret meeting between the head imams and sheiks of Hebron, who had a meeting with President Ruby Rivlin just a month ago, was in the headlines asking, when will we have sovereignty in Hebron? Because they are oppressed by Hamas and they hate the Palestinian Authority. I know what's going on the ground here, Dr. Leech. And the truth is that the Arabs prefer to live under Jewish rule, have dignity and human rights under Jewish rule, just like in America, you can have Christians, Muslims, and Jews live. In Israel, you can have Christians, Muslims, and Jews. The Jews are the indigenous population. There is no belligerent occupation. We have every right to live in our historical homeland, Judea and Samaria. The Fourth Geneva Convention doesn't even apply, according to international law, to Judea and Samaria, because first of all, it's about forcefully transferring populations.
You two, enough. Right, I've got you finally. Finally, I've got you. There's a masterful sort of period. By the way, for you at home, this shows the powerlessness of the presenter in these circumstances. But thank you both for this wonderful connection. I'm going to ask you each one last question, okay? One last question before we wrap things up. Okay, let me start with you, Phil. Taking aside the interpretation of what Avi is saying, which you clearly don't agree with, would you accept one thing that he's saying, which is clearly the reason that we haven't got to a two-state solution to date is because it's the Palestinian or Arab side who haven't signed up? He's given you examples in history when they haven't done so, very recent ones back to 2007 even. And it doesn't seem likely that's going to change, does it? So surely there's some culpability on that part, Phil.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's arguments that are made this way, and then you can read arguments that make both cases. I don't know. I don't take a position on that. But I mean, it doesn't matter really, does it? For the day-to-day reality, I've told you that I don't support the Palestinian Authority, and I've been harshly critical of it. But I do not think you get to judge an entire population by the actions of their government, whether they're right or wrong. And the situation in Palestine is blatantly obvious to people. You don't need to acknowledge secret meetings, and you don't need to obsess or legitimately be concerned about historical massacres, but you don't need to pretend that's the only thing that's happened. If you go to the West Bank today, or if you read any report from any reputable organization, the United Nations, the World Bank, the IMF, you will see details in great depth about the problems caused by the occupation. It's not a reality. It's not a fiction. It's a reality, and it's a great impediment to the achievement of human rights and basic dignity.
Okay, Avi, last question for you. You've made a strong case for, if you like, the continued presence of Israeli. He's made a strong case for the continued presence of Israeli settlers in what you're terming Judea and Samaria. Okay. At what point, though, do you make a distinction between Israeli Arabs, who you've stated have full rights, and those Arabs living in those lands? Do you envisage them getting the same rights that Israeli Arabs enjoy in Israel?
Ultimately, the solution where human dignity and human rights for the Muslims are going to be when Israel applies sovereignty to as much areas of Judea and Samaria as possible, where those Arabs who are under those sovereign rule receive equal rights. There might be some areas of autonomy, some areas of a Jordanian Arab federation, but any Arabs who will ever be under Israeli sovereign rule will have equality and freedom living with Israel. And the luckiest Muslims in the whole Middle East are the Muslims who live in Israel.
But let me just on that note, hold on quickly. The issue, you're saying you don't want to annex the whole of the West Bank, correct?
You asked me what I think is going to happen.
Okay.
What I think that's what's going to happen in the end.
But what do you want? What do you want? Do you want it all?
I believe the best thing do I want it all? I don't know. I want what. I don't know if the major Arab populations
you've just stated a historical point.
Hebron, I don't know what's going to happen. What I want there to be as much sovereignty, Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria as possible, and where the Arabs who then are under Israeli sovereign rule will live like the Jews of Israel and have the human dignity and human rights more than they do currently under most Muslim regimes throughout the Middle East.
Okay, gentlemen, that's all we have time for. I'm pretty sure we won't agree on the conclusions there between all of us, but thank you both for participating so fulsomely. Thank you all at home. We'll see you again soon for another episode of Current Affairs on JTV.